A-list attitudes. That's what we're looking for at Penn State. They're coming off an 11-2 year. They're coming off a Rose Bowl. We have really seen a surge in Penn State. Those folks are dialed in up there. James Franklin's 4-14 against the top two in that conference, Michigan and Ohio State. He is 74-22 versus everyone else. That is a heck of a job of coaching. It's not elite, premier, top of the line. It's that next rung below it. You're a solid B-list actor, and you want to be an A-lister.
Welcome to the Straight from the Crest podcast.
Welcome to the Straight from the Crest podcast. I'm your host, Michael David Krestovich. We have arrived. The showdown in Columbus, Penn State hitting the road this weekend, noon kick, traveling their biggest game to date. Garrett Bastardi joins the show as always. We're going to preview the Nittany Lions' big noon kickoff, give our analysis, and discuss the pathway that we can see the Nittany Lions winning this game or potentially losing this game. First and foremost, this show is brought to you by Protocol Beverage. You see the flag behind me. Guys, you guys go out and try it. It's pretty much all over Pennsylvania, Ohio. Just Google it in your phone, pull it up, must be 21 to enjoy. Garrett, we're finally here. We've made it. Penn State, Ohio State. This is one of the biggest games in Penn State's program in the last few years. I equate it to that 2018 game against the Buckeyes. How you doing? Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Mikey. I'm good. Yeah, just ready to dive in. This is, no national talk this week. This game needs all the attention it can possibly get. So excited to dig into where we think Penn State can win this game and where the shortfalls might be.
I don't know about you, man. It's Wednesday night here and we're recording. I'm ready to go. I mean, I'm sure as hell not playing the game Saturday. I don't think you are unless you're playing Nickelback.
I could play Nickelback, but no.
I'm very excited for this game for many reasons. As a football fan, as a Penn State fan, and to kind of see the first real test of the season here in Columbus. But before we do dive into the preview and discuss the X's and O's, let's take it back this past weekend. Of course, Penn State with a 63-0 victory at home in the rain against a weak UMass team. I was pretty spot on with my prediction. We'll go there. I said 56-3. I was hoping toward the end that it would land on that magic number, but nonetheless, very impressive performance. Penn State, just spectacular, efficient game. That's the way I'd kind of categorize it. Allar, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, both from Theo Johnson and Hardy. On special teams, they're kind of finally getting some play on that side of the ball. In the defense, 7 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. How much of a boost does this give the Nittany Lions, Garrett, heading into Columbus this weekend?
Yeah, I think that the boost comes from, having a bye week and then basically having a scrimmage the week before Ohio State. Obviously, probably since the Northwestern game, Penn State has been, doing what they need to do to prepare for this game. I mean, we know firsthand that they've been preparing for this game since the spring. And so this is the game, much like you, I'm just ready for it to be, in my time, 11 a.m. Central, 12 a.m. Eastern, for the game on Fox on Saturday. Let's just play it and see what happens. You can look at it from about 30 different angles. But we'll get into that in a second. So yeah, no big changes. I think this was just another example of how Penn State plays football this year. Extremely complimentary. The special teams got going this week, 2 punt returns for touchdowns, by Daquan Hardy. And apparently that wasn't good enough to get him sole special teams player of the week in the Big Ten. That's how good Iowa's punter has been punting, I guess, for them. So Penn State just never seems to get the love they deserve. You have a guy return 2 punts in one game for a touchdown. Hasn't been done in the Big Ten in years. And but yeah, I'm just excited to get through this past week, and we're just finally here to the big game.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned there, Garrett, the whole offseason, Coach Franklin and his staff kind of preach that 1-0 mentality every week, that they know in the back of their minds, this is the game that matters. This is Michigan every single year. And ever since that loss to Ohio State a year ago, it's been nothing but greatness from the Nittany Lions. They're 11-0. They've scored 30 points in every game since, averaging 432 yards per game and 25 takeaways, and they've given the ball away 6 times since then. That includes the Michigan game. And it's been a series here as we transition. And just to touch on it, Ohio State did beat Purdue. I thought that was one of their best games they played, 41-7, very convincing win there. But this series, outside of that 2016 game, it's been 6 wins in a row since that fable Stillway fairy tale ending there in Happy Valley that we were obviously both rushed the field there. But 2011, 2014, it was 2011, 2016. It's been the only victories. Ohio State's owned this series, but now it feels like the tide's starting to shift. Penn State has that elite quarterback they've lacked. They've built a coaching staff predicated on past success, and they kind of have studs all around the field. In my opinion, this is the most talented team the Nittany Lions are putting out to play against the Buckeyes, probably, I would say, since the 2005 team. Maybe the 2008 team, I would argue that. It's talent across the board, and that's where I think Penn State kind of can hold its own. I'm not saying they have the advantage whatsoever, because there's a dude named Marvin Harrison Jr. who you guys are going to watch next Sunday that has Justin Jefferson potential in the NFL. And I hate that the dude's a baller, and Penn State is going to have its hands full trying to cover him. But it's not just him, as we'll get into later. Garrett, my favorite question every week, when you see the name Ohio State Buckeyes, what first comes to mind this year? What's their identity, and kind of how are they the team they are today?
Yeah, they're a different Ohio State team than years past. They play a little bit more defense. They're a little bit more hard-nosed. Their toughness has been challenged, especially losing. They've won 35 straight Big Ten matchups, with the exception of 2 games versus Michigan. They're 35-0 against everybody else in the Big Ten except Michigan. So, under Urban Meyer, you could always kind of expect maybe once a year, once every other year, them losing to some, a Purdue or an Iowa. That has not been the case under Ryan Day. It's been 2 losses to Michigan, and that's kind of defined the last couple of years. Otherwise, they'd be, 6-time defending Big Ten champions. I think they're a little bit tougher this year. I think they're when it comes to, they play more ball at the line of scrimmage. They're not trying to be as, beat you outside the hashes, not trying to be kind of smoke and mirrors. They're going to try to line up and beat you, with the big uglies up front. With that being said, they don't run the ball very well, and they have issues with their offensive line. So we then turn to the defense. They've been a tougher defense to play against. 3 of the top 4 scoring defenses in the country reside in the Big Ten East, with Penn State being number 1 in the country and Ohio State being number 3, I believe. So this is going to be a different game than I think we've seen in years past. More of a chess match rather than, last year there were 9 explosive plays of over 20 yards between 2 teams. I think it's a little bit more like we've seen the 05 game, the 08 game, games that are kind of in a Tressel Paterno era style game, than more so than what we're going to see, what we've seen maybe in the last several years in this series.
I remember 2018 going into Columbus. Penn State was slated as a 17.5-point underdog. We're not playing the underdog role anymore. We're playing to the level of, this is going to be a competitive ass game, and we have the talent to show for it. Garrett, this is a team that kind of lucked its way into the college football playoff last year and damn near made the college football championship. Without the Gamecocks down here knocking off Tennessee and Clemson, Ohio State probably doesn't get into the Final Four. Get in there, they have a 14-point lead against Georgia, and just a disastrous New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and they see their season slip away. They're pissed off. Like you said, their offensive line isn't your traditional powerhouse offensive line. They lost 3 guys to the NFL draft. they're hurting up front in experience. Last year, they came in on paper, and we broke down the show. We said there's a clear difference in talent. First and foremost, at the quarterback position. Their quarterback last year that they brought into Beaver Stadium to play, he's down in Houston playing for the Texans and looks like one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. He's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he turned around. You had a quarterback that was good enough to turn around a disaster of a franchise in the NFL. That says a lot, I think, with how much they were really, dealing with how much they had at quarterback, and how much, they ended up losing at quarterback too.
And I think this is a great segment here. Let's break down the quarterbacks. This is Drew Allar's third ever road game, his first test, really. And he's going to face, we've been in that stadium. That place was rocking. It's going to be hype. We have friends who are Ohio State fans. We know that they're scared. They admit, they say, listen, this isn't your classic, let's take care of the ball and escape a win against Penn State. It's no, you got to bring your A game here. And let's kind of talk about McCord and Allar right now. Just some numbers here that I dug out. Thanks to producer Chris Herb for these, by the way. So despite having 11 less attempts than Drew Allar, McCord has 400 more passing yards. They're about equal touchdown-wise. Allar has one more. Ohio State's really only ran – their rushing isn't what it's at. They have 810 yards on the ground. Penn State has over 1,200. But where the separation is at the wideout position, they're getting more production out of their wide receivers. The three-headed monster with Marvin Harrison, Pennsylvania's own Julian Fleming, and I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this. I always do.
Emeka
Ibuka.
I got you.
They're three monsters, and Ibuka's playing this weekend. He didn't play last week. They've got some talent, as well as Stover, their tight end, who I think's a terrific threat, who kind of torched Penn State last year. But from a personnel perspective, Garrett, this is a dangerous team the Nittany Lions are facing.
Yeah, absolutely. Stover, Harrison Jr., Fleming, Ibuka, having Travion Henderson in the backfield, they're going to be able to have the weapons to beat you in several different ways. Now being able to include Devin Brown, their backup quarterback, former 4 or 5-star commit, bringing him into some red zone packages and some goal line packages at quarterback. There's a lot of ways that they can beat you offensively, and there's a lot of ways that they can beat you through the air. You're absolutely right where they struggle a little bit on the ground. If I were to tell you, we wouldn't sit here and say that Katron Allen, you would be surprised to hear that both Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton both have more rushing yards than Travion Henderson. Bo Pribula almost has more rushing yards than Travion Henderson. They have struggled to get it going on the ground. And he's their kind of single bell cow back there. It's not like they're splitting reps with 2-3 guys. So I think the game, the passing game for both teams, we're talking about quarterbacks here, is going to be where the offensive, where the battle is fought on the offensive side of the ball. I think that, both teams will probably be serviceable in the run game. I think Penn State has more upside in the run game. And as we saw with Ohio State against Notre Dame was able to establish a run game in the second half. So maybe Penn State can do that. But sticking with Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr., Cade Stover, and Emeka Ibuka. Those are the three guys. Those are the three guys that make a young Kyle McCord look good. Penn State is going to have to find a way to probably take away. I don't want to get too great. If you can take away 2 of the 3, Penn State wins the game. You take away 1 of the 3, there's a real good. It's going to come down to the wire. If all 3 of those guys are able to kind of just pick their poison and have a day, it's going to be tough for Penn State to win the game.
The matchup from the 3 wide receivers kind of resembles Ohio State going up against Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs back in that national championship. Because if you remember what Ohio State's game plan going in, they knew they weren't going to shut them down. What they did is, listen, we're going to play this soft shell and we're going to keep everything in front. We're not going to get beat up top. If we can contain everything in get some pressure, which we're going to talk about the effect of Penn State's pass rush. Get some pressure. That's really going to make the game. But let's talk about that Notre Dame game, because that was Ohio State has a very, very respectable win, and I think Notre Dame's performance over USC proves kind of how legit Notre Dame was. And we both said this is a classic Notre Dame team. These guys are good. But that was a game the Buckeyes went up 10-0 and ended up coming down to the very last play. But one thing I wish Penn State would try to do from a game plan perspective, because obviously they watched that game. Ohio State struggled to defend tight ends in that game for Notre Dame. And I think that's an area, because if you remember the game last year, Garrett, Parker Washington had 11 catches for 171 yards. He's in Jacksonville playing with the Jags right now. He's no longer here. I mean, Trevor Leonard-Smith caught a touchdown, but that was it. Tyler Warren had a solid game last year too, if I can remember correctly. But there's got to be guys on Penn State's side that can kind of shine through if Penn State wants to be successful. But let's talk about the keys to victory here. I want to start off with Penn State's defense. When we talked earlier in the week, when we kind of planned out the show, we talked about the pressure Penn State needs to get, because McCord under pressure, he kind of gives off the Sean Clifford vibes. When stuff breaks down, he gets squirrely, and Penn State's pass rush is good enough to cause ruckus there. So from a Penn State perspective, what do you think needs to be done in order to kind of contain this Buckeyes attack offensively?
Yeah, I think, first of all, like I mentioned, if the secondary can do an effective job of taking 2 of the 3 of those guys away, Marvin Harrison Jr., Cade Stover, and Emeka Ibuka, if they can take 2 of the 3 away, very good chance of winning. Take 1 of 3 away, it's going to be a tight ball game. If they're able to make it difficult enough where they're taking two of those 3 guys away, or at least covering them a good amount, that's going to give the front 7 enough time to try to push McCord around, or at least push him off schedule and out of the pocket. And so the front 7 is solid. The linebackers are a really good group, I think. Abdul Carter, Dom DeLuca, Kobe King, and I just think that they're going to have the ability to get theirs against this offensive line from Ohio State. So it's kind of complementary there. If the secondary can really lock down and play at the level they are capable of, it's going to make Kyle McCord go through his progressions, take a little bit more time, get off schedule, and then kind of be able to bring those dynamic, interesting looking pressures that we get from Coach Diaz. And so you can get Ohio State kind of behind the chains, get them into some 3rd and longs, get them into even 2nd and longs. Those are kind of going to be the keys stacked on top of each other, and getting that on a consistent basis through the game. I think Ohio State is going to, break off a play here or there. But I think, it's an interesting point that you made about, kind of bubbling off and keeping the game in front of you. I don't always love that style of play. But as the field gets shorter, Ohio State has struggled more and more to punch it in. They are, sub 80 in the country in red zone scoring, while Penn State's somewhere in the top 5, top 10. So that is somewhere where, we saw a game this past week in a top 10 matchup lost, where, Oregon had the ball 3 times, I believe, inside the red zone, really inside the 10-yard line, and just really was not able to score on Washington. So, there's a couple of different ways. There is not just one route where this defense can win the game for Penn State. There's several different ways. And that's the benefit of, having more talent and being a little bit more well-rounded of a squad than maybe previous years.
Yeah, I think to your point there, Garrett, kind of the pass coverage, these corners can, and I think Manny Diaz knows this, obviously, if our dumb caveman brains could think of it. The pass rush is really going to set up the coverage. If they can figure out to get pressure, that's going to take coverage pressure off these corners. And these young corners, you think about it, Joey Porter Jr. was the number 1 last year. He's gone. They slid everyone up on that depth chart. So it's going to be guys like Keaton Ellis, who I love the kid, great guy, but he struggled last year in this game. A lot of pressure on him, a lot of pressure on the rest of the nickels there. So I'm interested to see that. And Ohio State's defense here, let's transition to the other side, they're no joke either. They returned.
Yeah.
They had 10 guys get all Big Ten honors last year, Garrett, and they bring back 7 of them. And obviously last year, JP Tuimoala tore up the game. 2 interceptions, a pick 6, forced fumble, 2 sacks, just ridiculous numbers. He's back, as is Tommy Eichenberg, another monstrous linebacker. I mentioned it previously with Penn State's got to find a way to get more production out of these wideouts here. Offensively, what's your game plan going into this game? How do you kind of to not necessarily scheme around? Because I do think I went back and rewatched the game last year. I mean, the first drive of the game, Clifford was picked off, and the last drive was a pick 6. They were kind of fluke plays. They were both on screens and a tipped pass. But what should Penn State's mentality be offensively moving into this weekend?
Yeah, I think you make another great point. Could they have been flukes? Yes, but we've seen several times this year where Ohio State and JTT they've been able to absolutely sniff out bubble screens, halfback screens, wide receiver screens. They have a very good knack and ability for doing that. And so we really, Penn State really does have to be careful, especially with the amount that Penn State does throw the ball short and really behind the line of scrimmage. They got to be tight on those things because Ohio State can score, tip one up and score off of that. We saw it last year. 2 years ago, Ohio State scored a defensive touchdown. So the offense has to do it. It has continued or continue to do what it has done all year. Take care of the football. Penn State lost last year. Really, lost by 13, but was leading in the fourth quarter. Turnovers did them in. 2 years, it was a 6-point game with 5 minutes to go. Ohio State had a defensive touchdown. At the very least, if Ohio State has a defensive touchdown, they're going to win the game. I'm going to say that right now. Okay, so you cannot have a defensive touchdown. You have to continue to take care of the ball. I think Penn State does have a turnover this weekend. I don't know how exactly it's going to occur. It probably will be a Drew Allar interception. But if it's anything more than that, that's where you get into trouble. You have a turnover. Okay, fine. We can live with that. So take care of the football. Offensively, I do have a few concerns. I mean, the fact that our third leading wide receiver is the 6th leading receiver on the team is an issue. It's absolutely an issue. Getting a healthy Harrison Wallace back is going to be big. That getting him fully healthy is going to be big. So not everybody is keying in on Lambert Smith, but I agree with you. You got to be able to utilize the tight ends. I do think the running game could get going, and if it can get going, that will spell a lot of trouble for Ohio State, and it will be a very good sign for Penn State. I really just, we talk about offensive keys. Penn State, with the lack of explosive plays being in really near the top or the bottom of the Power 5, Mike, they have to continue to play very clean football. The margin of error is smaller than I'd like. Do they have another gear? I think they do, but I haven't seen it. A lot of what's this weekend in my mind, and when we get to our picks, is going to be, I kind of have to believe it after, or I'm not going to really believe it until I see it. I hate to be that kind of analyst, but Penn State being one of the last 14 against Ohio State, 1 in 9 under James Franklin, haven't won a road game at Ohio State in 12 years. You kind of do need a lot of things to go right, as you do anytime you're playing a top 3 team in the country. So Drew's got to take care of the football. Somebody's got to step up. It's got to be either Harrison Wallace or Dante Cephas, maybe even Liam Clifford. Would like to see at least one explosive play. We had 4 last year. That was big. I think you need to have 2 if you're going to win the game.
I think so too. And, the big talk has been that explosive play category where half the Penn State fan base is saying we're saving it for this game, which I think is bullshit. I hope we are. I hope they pull a rabbit out of their hat and come up with 13 explosive plays out of the gate. But to your point, when we talked obviously about what Parker Washington did last year, you mentioned Harrison Wallace here. I think, and Liam Clifford, I think Garrett, the difference maker in this game, is going to come in not at the Keandre Lambert Smith. I think this is the coming out party for Dante Cephas in the slot. I think Liam Clifford or Dante Cephas is going to make a play here to really alter this game. And it's going to come down to that because they're gonna pay attention to Keandre Lambert-Smith. They know what Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson are capable of. But I think it's a big game for the tight ends, and I think it's a big game for the slot receivers on the Nittany Lions side. I think it's going to be one hell of a game. I'll say that.
I listen. If you're right about Cephas having a big game, that would go a long way to helping this team. Have more options and weapons offensively.
And I think one thing that they can take away, because you don't want to harp on just last year's game and take away positive negatives and try to reinforce what we did well and correct what we didn't. But one thing that I particularly liked offensively is last year, we were very aggressive on 4th and short. We went for it in plus territory, and that's kind of what you have to do. And you got to be consistent with it. You got to take care of the ball, be aggressive on 4th down, and on the defensive side, get McCord into obvious passing situations. Get him into 3rd and long. You can't have him in 3rd and 4. That's when they're just get him to 3rd down. If Ohio State can avoid 3rd down, this is going to seem like another caveman thought, but if they can avoid 3rd downs, they're going to win this game. Get them into 3rd and longs, keep it 3rd and 7 and above. And that's how Penn State's going to win the game defensively. And this is, I'm seeing it. I think it opened up at 6.5. It's got the whole way down to 3.5. I see it at 4.5 right now. I believe the over-under is around 48. That's kind of the last number that I saw. Let's get into predictions here. I want to hear where you're at. Who's winning this game? Who's covering? And total. Just give me your thoughts here as we're 2.5 days away from kickoff.
Yeah. I think something weird's going to happen. I think that there's always something weird in this game. The blocked field goal in 2016, obviously the collapse in 2017, the collapse in 2018, 2019, Ohio State was up 21-0 and Penn State came roaring back. Not going to count COVID year 2021, another weird game, very tight, both teams. It just always seems like when Penn State and Ohio State play each other, they just kind of they're like heavyweight boxers in the ring, just kind of looking for like a lot of looking, dodging, ducking, seeing where we can, find a spot to attack. So I think it's a slowly evolving game, like it usually is when Penn State plays these guys. I think Ohio State wins. I think they cover. I think it's going to be something like 24-17. Like I said, I'm gonna believe it till I see it, guy. I think Penn State can win the game, but we talk about, is this the year? I don't know. A big number that stands out to me still is Ohio State's blue chip ratio is second in the country at 85%, and Penn State's still down at 55%. Naturally, that puts you at a disadvantage. Ohio State does have more depth, more overall talent in general. The wide receiver position is a gaping hole with Penn State. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And you have two guys who are going to play on Sundays with Ohio State. So some way, shape, or form, that's going to be an issue. Drew can play great. Drew has played great. Hasn't turned the ball over. Been very clean. I'm starting to think a big reason why he's not able to really explode or exfoliate, if you will. He doesn't have the weapons that he needs, and that's just going back. Maybe that's recruiting over the last several years. And Taylor Stubblefield, the wide receiver coach, has been let go because he wasn't able to recruit at wide receiver for us. So you look at Tua, right? You look at C.J. Stroud. You look at all these great Mac Jones. They all looked great, but they all had freaking NFL talent everywhere, right? Drew has looked great and serviceable because he's able to kind of pick his spots here and there. Needs weapons. I think Ohio State has more weapons. I think they win the game.
Okay, yeah, I've been going back and forth all week. When we talked, I was very confident, and then I kind of thought about it. I came down to earth, and I said exactly what you said. I laid out the matchups. I gave the advantage to the Buckeyes. But as we're getting closer, I think Penn State wins this football game, and I think they win it. think they win at 24-20 or 2013. I think it's going to be lower than our friends in the desert think.
Mm-hmm.
I agree something wacky is going to happen, like the strip sack that down in Columbus a couple years ago when I guess the last time they were in Columbus, when they stripped at midfield and ran 65 yards right in front of us for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I would bet on a defensive touchdown or some fluke special teams play, but I think Penn State does enough. And I don't think it comes down to quarterback versus quarterback. I think it comes down to who can take care of the ball and who can kind of make that last stop. I think this is going to be pretty indicative of what kind of team Penn State is. And there's a path to the college football playoff if they lose this game, but it's like going on 80 West in the snow. It's treacherous what they have to do.
Yeah.
So I'm taking the Nittany Lions here. Let's do a little some side things here. We won't do the favorite alumnus just because I don't really like anyone. No, I'm just kidding.
We have none.
A lot of respect for Ohio State. A lot of respect. Great program. Great guys. But let's talk about who's going to score the first touchdown for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, so here's the issue. When I said we're going to have 17 points, it's going to be 5 field goals and a safety. So, no, I think, probably a read option, linebacker bites, hits Tyler. We hit Tyler Warren on a seam route, 13 yards for the first touchdown of the game for Penn State.
Okay. I have Katron Allen as mine. I thought he played really well last year against the Buckeyes. I can see a long drive and T formation, him taking one off tackle for the score.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I have that. 1.5 touchdowns for Drew, over under passing.
I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna go under here.
Okay, I'm under as well. As well. Marvin Harrison Jr. How many times did he get in the end zone?
I think he gets in one, but I think he has I think he's going to have at least 8 receptions. If he stays under 8, Penn State secondary has done a really good job.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the thing. I think. Yeah. As Garrett mentioned, it's a plethora of talent on the Buckeye side, and Penn State has it, so it's going to be a game, man. That's for sure.
Yeah. And the last thing, one thing that we should take note of, like, early is I want to see if there's any wrinkles in the playbook early. And I think that's going to kind of show us how much more there is to open throughout the rest of the game. We watched the West Virginia game. We said how, after the first week is like, man, we have one of the more unique formations, the ability to stack receivers super wide. We're doing trips right, doubles left, quick clearing out the safeties. And we've just seen none of that since week 1. And so I don't know what that's about. Maybe we see it all opened back up on Saturday.
Yeah, our variation of personnel we used week 1 was, I wish I had the number in front of me, but it's kind of like when we would play NCAA and we would have custom playbooks with these bizarre formations and personnel groups and running 21 personnel and 22 and sometimes even 3 running backs, 2 tight ends week 1. We saw that. And now it's just like, okay, let's use the pro style. Let's use just the playbook where you got to change it up. You can't be bland. And Mike Leach actually has a great video on this. He talks about, and you mentioned this earlier in the show, balance. And when people say you got to have a balanced attack, it doesn't mean we have to run for 200 yards and pass for 200 yards. If you try to do that, you're going to lose. What a balanced offense means when coaches say that, it means being able to run when you need to run and being able to pass when you need to pass. And I think if Penn State can do that, I think they win this game. I mean, and that's pretty much all I have to say. We will be live Saturday morning on Instagram. We're going to bring in our good friend Colin, who's probably the biggest Ohio State fan that I know. and who knows ball. We're going to get his thoughts. We're going to go live Saturday morning sometime before kick, as well at halftime, to kind of give our thoughts. So make sure you guys tune in. That'll be on Instagram as well. But
I'll tell you one thing. If Colin Spencer was coaching the Buckeyes the last 2 years, they wouldn't have lost to Michigan. You can take that to the bank.
They would not have lost to Michigan.
No chance. No chance.
Garrett, thanks as always, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the next show here next week as we talk about kind of what we're going into this weekend. But guys, enjoy the game. Thank you for listening. Thanks for all your support. Really appreciate it. Take care.